The story begins at the moment when the heroine's body lay wounded on the floor. The other squad members, with whom she had fought, immediately rushed to her side. One of them exclaimed that Arin was just an idiot and questioned why she had done this. The squad's healer instantly began helping her, but after a moment, he said the infection was spreading too quickly. If her body started to decay in that state, resurrecting her would be impossible. The heroine lay there, thinking only of how much pain she felt. Their squad's mission was to exterminate Conturna. He was a demonic dragon who had disturbed the world's balance. The squad members were great warriors gathered from different dimensions. The women in the squad were the heroine herself, Hania, and Jamil. Among the men were Zephyr and Heder. The latter told Arin they would never forget her noble sacrifice. Zephyr retorted that such words should be spoken only after her eyes closed forever, calling Heder a fool. The leader of this company was a hero of troubled times, the strongest, who had united the world and dimensions entirely, and also the heroine's only close friend, Elkinus. Leading the squad, he guided them down to the deepest levels of the demonic cave, and at the very moment he prepared to strike the demon dragon with a decisive blow, the unthinkable happened. It turned out to be the dragon's breath, and the heroine noticed it, but there was no time left to think. The girl immediately decided to act and pushed her friend Elle away. In the next instant, she absorbed the breath sphere. Conturna's breath was a poisonous gas that, before becoming gaseous, existed in small spheres. This meant it could be contained at that stage with minimal losses. So, by doing this, there was a chance to save everyone at the cost of only one life. The heroine sacrificed herself then, not thinking about anything else. All that mattered was saving them all. After everyone ran up to her, the heroine asked whether the dragon was dead. Jamil immediately replied that of course he was, but questioned why Arin had silently sacrificed herself, and, above all, why. The heroine remarked that even if it saved them, there had been no time to raise a shield. Jamil added that they should have just died together instead of her sacrificing herself. With tears in her eyes, she continued, reminding Arin that they had promised, if they were to die, then together. Arin replied that Jamil should pull herself together and stop crying. Suddenly, the heroine felt her vision was being affected by the poison. Moments ago, her comrades' faces were clear, but now she couldn't see at all. She wondered if her sense of feeling was also gone, since she no longer felt pain. Perhaps that was for the best, death would be painless. Then she called out to Elle, asking why he wasn't coming closer. She wanted to look at him one last time, to see his handsome face before the end. She added that her mood was excellent, and she had always wondered how she would feel at the moment of death. She never imagined it would be so easy and joyful. She felt happy, even blissful, and told them they must all live wonderful lives. That was the final thought left in the heroine's memory. Some time later, the heroine reappeared on Earth. Suddenly, she wondered if she had awakened, and how such a thing could be possible. After all, she had definitely fought the demonic dragon Conturna, and during the final attack, she had certainly died. Now the girl sat, thinking about what had actually happened. She didn't know what this place was, but she could clearly feel the energy of spirits here. Still, she was curious, where exactly was she? Looking around more closely, the girl realized she was probably near the World Tree. At that moment, a young man approached her and confirmed that she was right. The heroine immediately turned toward him, surprised, and asked if he was truly Zephyr. He replied that she had guessed correctly, that it had been a long time since they had met, and even called her a sorceress. This was none other than Lord Zephyr, a member of the squad that had once fought the dragon alongside her. The girl quickly asked why he said a long time. Zephyr explained that, in fact, 80 years had already passed since that day. Shocked, the heroine asked if he was serious. A whole 80 years. Zephyr then remarked that perhaps their experiment had succeeded. They walked together toward a house. As they went, the heroine thought that, considering this was supposed to be a dragon's nest abandoned for 80 years, it looked surprisingly clean and cozy, almost as if people still lived there. It turned out Zephyr still had unfinished business in this world. The heroine then asked him to explain how all of this had happened. He admitted that, in secret, he had hidden her soul the moment she died. The heroine asked in disbelief how he had managed that. Zephyr explained that, at that time, a spiritual sphere had appeared from her mouth. Her soul was radiant with happiness, ready to depart for the afterlife. It was said that she had left joyfully, casting aside the burdens of the mortal world in search of her true happiness. That was why he had taken her soul. The girl slammed the table and demanded to know how he dared. Who was he to go against the very laws of nature? Zephyr replied that he only wanted to help her soul find peace beneath the world tree, which was guarded by dragons. After all, she was worthy, the only person the spirits had ever blessed with love. The heroine thought that, even though she was a spirit conjurer, that fact alone did not give her the right to rest in such a sacred place. This meant Zephyr, as the protector of the world tree, had broken countless duties just to bring her there. She thanked him nonetheless, but still wondered how she had returned to life. Zephyr admitted it was truly strange. The world tree had demanded his blood, and he assumed that was the price for laying her soul to rest, so he gave it, but instead, the tree began weaving a sphere of branches and leaves in its crown. It then embraced her soul within its shelter, as though it intended to revive her. Over time, a new body began to form, and after 80 years, she was reborn. The heroine was astonished by this and asked what nonsense he was saying. Zephyr added that she had changed greatly compared to her former self and handed her a small mirror. She took it in her hands and looked at her renewed face. What she saw shocked her deeply. Zephyr mused aloud whether this could be considered their joint experiment with the world tree. After all, the body had been created by both of them, and the result was a great success, from a human perspective, that would make him her father, and the world tree her mother. He then remarked that, if she wished, she could call him father, but before he could even finish the sentence, the mirror the heroine had been holding flew into his head. Rubbing his forehead, Zephyr said that if that was how it was, he would at least give her a brief summary of what had happened in the meantime. The girl agreed, adding that brevity suited her perfectly. The first thing he said was that the warrior Elkinus had gone mad. These very words left the heroine completely shocked. Elkinus Pontiac, being a descendant of a branch family of the imperial bloodline, had risen to the level of a demigod and gained eternal life after claiming the heart of the demonic dragon he slew. Hearing this, the girl admitted it sounded impressive, but asked why her companion had called him mad. Zephyr explained it was because Elkinus had taken Kunturna's egg and was now caring for it. The heroine immediately asked if he meant the demonic dragon Kunturna, the very enemy they had fought against. She also demanded to know why no one had stopped him. Zephyr added that all his comrades, including himself, had opposed him, but Elkinus ignored every argument. Everyone had begged him to destroy the dragon's egg. The heroine wondered if all that pleading had been useless. Zephyr replied that he could recall several deaths because of it. When Duke Pontiac tried to pressure him with the power of the family, Elkinus killed him and became head of the house. He even killed his uncle, his own blood relative. And the 6th Night Squad, which the Denbane Empire, Elkinus's homeland, had sent as a warning, was completely annihilated. The heroine could hardly believe her ears and asked how such a thing could happen. She couldn't understand why he needed the egg, or why he would raise such a creature, why act against everyone like this. Zephyr admitted he suspected the reason. It was Kunturna's ability to transcend time and space. Elkinus wanted to return to the past and change something there. The heroine exclaimed that he must have gone insane. Why return to the past if he lived in peace now? What could he possibly want to change? Her companion replied that, for example, he might want to undo her death. She immediately told him to stop talking nonsense, that such a thing made no sense at all, but he countered with a rhetorical question, was she sure it had no meaning? The heroine insisted of course it was meaningless. Everyone prepares for death, there's no way around it, even a child would understand. Before their mission, they had sworn an oath, each of them was ready to sacrifice their life if necessary. Then the girl thought about it more deeply and suddenly remembered Jamil, her good friend, an arrogant thief, and Elkinus's beloved. She asked her companion what had become of Jamil. Zephyr replied that, if she meant the queen of the thieves' world, then Jamil had died, dedicating her life to ruling the underworld. He asked why she wanted to know. The heroine quickly retorted, how could he even ask that? If Jamil had spoken to him, Elkinus surely would have listened. After all, they cared for each other. She asked if they had married. Zephyr told her there had been no marriage. The girl was stunned. Had they truly broken up? Now everything made sense. If Elkinus had been raising a demonic dragon's offspring while she was still with him, she too would have left. After all, what kind of great warrior would raise the spawn of a demonic dragon? At this, Zephyr gave her a strange look. She noticed and asked what that look meant. He said Elkinus must have simply been unlucky from the start, but urged her to continue. The The heroine was surprised and asked if Jamil and Elkinus had truly never been together. Zephyr confirmed again, nothing had ever happened between them. Even he knew that. The heroine protested, but they had been so close, the two of them would disappear every night for training, and Elkinus had trusted her with his protection. Zephyr asked if she was certain it had really been training. After all, Elkinus was a warrior, and by entrusting her with his protection, he had also entrusted her with his life. The heroine also remembered how she often caught the boy whispering secretly with someone, and she always noticed it. Each time after that, Elkinus's face would turn bright red. Zephyr noticed the sorceress, but he couldn't explain the reason for it. That was something the boy himself had to tell. The heroine recalled that the first time she saw her companion, he was the shortest boy in their village. Her mother was an herbalist, and every time the girl accompanied her on errands, she constantly saw that child beaten up. Once, upon seeing such a dreadful sight, the girl thought she had to act. She shouted loudly to a knightly uncle, telling him to come quickly, as she needed his help. Barney and his gang, who were beating her friend, panicked upon hearing this, shouted that they had to flee, and ran off. The girl immediately approached the boy and told him how lucky they were, that the bluff had worked. Then she asked if he was badly hurt and if she could look at his wounds. The boy, who would later become her closest friend, allowed her to do so, and she treated him with medicinal herbs. Shortly after, she led him into the forest, where she introduced him to the spirits that only she could see. The boy was deeply fascinated and watched with joy. That was how he became her best friend. From then on, the girl went everywhere with him, holding hands. With him, she never felt lonely, but one day, Elkinus disappeared. According to rumors, he was the descendant of Duke Pontiac. Their next meeting took place 12 years later, a year after her mother's death. That very year, the heroine had just turned 22. While she was working in her garden, a young man suddenly approached and apologized for being late, addressing her as Arin. He added that he had wanted to come sooner, but circumstances had prevented him. He explained how he had struggled to gain recognition from the Pontiac family. Not only did they refuse to acknowledge him, but they also tried to restrict him in every way. That was why he hadn't been able to return before. The heroine immediately asked if that meant he could now stay here peacefully, but the young man said no, he would soon have to leave again. It was because he had been ordered to capture a dragon in the Denbane Empire. The girl asked what dragon he was talking about. Could it really be the demonic dragon Kuntern? And was he truly expected to face it alone? The young man replied that this was exactly why he had come to see Arin. He promised that one day he would return again, and that he would survive no matter what. But the heroine cried out that she would go with him. Surely her presence would be of use. After all, she was a spellcaster. She asked if he even remembered that, before her mother passed away, she had told her about her remarkable abilities. Her companion was shocked, yet he said he couldn't risk her life as well, and that she just needed to wait for him here. The heroine protested. What was he talking about? Staying behind wouldn't guarantee her safety anyway, as this world was full of dangers. She kept begging to go with Elkinus. After all, throughout her life, she had never had another friend besides him. So how could she just let him go, now that they had finally reunited after so many years? The young man was surprised, but he kept listening silently. The girl insisted she would never be a burden. Walking by his side, she too would gain strength. At this, her companion smiled and told Arin that he was at a loss for words. Finally, he agreed. He immediately grabbed her hand and knelt before her. He told her that of all the people he knew, she was the kindest and bravest, and his one and only irreplaceable friend. The girl was shocked by his words and the situation itself. Then Elkinus declared that they would live their lives hand in hand, face death together, and asked if she agreed. He bowed over her hand and kissed it, saying that when their journey ended, they would remain together forever. The heroine now sat with tears in her eyes, reflecting on it. She wondered what all this meant, and how her gentle, kind Elkinus could say such things. Zephyr muttered that if he had to hear any more of this, blood would start pouring from his ears. The girl called him a heartless dragon and told him to think at least for a moment. After all, how could such a kind child suddenly become the enemy of an entire continent? Her companion replied that he wasn't the enemy of the whole continent, of course, but he reminded the sorceress that despite her constant talk of Elkinus's kindness, his behavior toward others hardly matched her description. To everyone else, he had been utterly vile, except to her. The heroine retorted angrily, demanding he not insult Elkinus. She reminded him that Elkinus had even shown courtesy by kneeling before a simple village girl like her. Clearly, he wasn't the monster her companion thought him to be. The man sitting beside her scoffed. How could she possibly accept such an outrageous proposal from him? He said spellcasters must all have nothing but air in their heads. The heroine thought to herself that he was still as sharp-tongued as ever, a real scoundrel. The girl then asked her companion what had happened to Hinani and Getter. Zephyr explained that Hania had become the head of the Ultima Church and passed away at the age of 97. God had shown her special favor, so she likely became an angel, or perhaps even a low-ranking deity. As for Getter, he failed to dissuade Elkinus and returned to his homeland, where he became chief of his tribe. Hearing this, the heroine said that everything seemed fine, everyone except Elkinus was doing well. But then she grew sad, realizing she shouldn't be happy about that and grieving instead for her friend. Zephyr remarked that she was falling back into her old ways again. The girl kept drinking, complaining about what was happening, but her companion told the sorceress to stop. Suddenly, the heroine set down her mug and declared her decision. She would go to her old friend at once. She would tell him she had returned to life and persuade him to abandon his plan with that creature's egg. Even if Elkinus cared for it, if there was even the slightest chance that it might grow into something like Kuntern, then she would destroy it herself. She knew she couldn't allow the same terrible tragedy to repeat again. Then Zephyr asked her if she really thought she could make the boy believe her. With a smile, she answered that of course he would. She was his only friend. He would recognize her the moment he saw her. Her companion replied that she still didn't seem to understand, but that was fine, she would learn firsthand. The heroine asked in surprise if she had said something wrong. Zephyr rose to his feet and said very well, he would go with her. After all, her human body was an important creation, crafted with noble dragon blood as its foundation. Because of this, Elkinus wouldn't be able to cut her down so easily. The heroine asked what he meant. He explained that since he had never declared his transformation complete, he could alter his form as often as he wished. Hearing this, the heroine finally understood why Zephyr's appearance hadn't changed at all in so many years. Transformation was a technique dragons used to live in the human world. There were special laws created for them regarding this ability. After one transformation, a dragon was required either to pause for 1,000 years or to end the transformation. If the spell was used again, they had to return to their original form. Her companion admitted this was true and went against the rules. But then he told the sorceress that this time, transformation was absolutely necessary for fulfilling a great mission. The decision, he said, was based on his own judgment and that of the Dragon Lord. The heroine asked if he didn't think that such an interpretation benefited only himself. To that, her companion said nothing. Instead, he remarked that to avoid drawing attention, perhaps he should become some kind of count. The girl was shocked at how he ignored her words. Then the young man turned to her and asked which title she would prefer. She asked if that meant she, too, would become an aristocrat. Zephyr noted that of course she would. Then he asked if she truly planned to announce herself as the sorceress Arin, who had died 80 years ago in the battle against the demonic dragon Kuntern. Surely she didn't intend such a dull introduction for her reappearance in a new form? After all, she needed some kind of explanation for what had happened to her. The girl began wondering about becoming a noblewoman. Then she admitted that she had always secretly wanted to try being one. Tea ceremonies with fine china, a ballroom, all of it had always appealed to her. Zephyr told her that she already was a noble. The heroine was stunned and asked if that could really be true. He continued, saying that every member of their old party had been given titles, and she as well. In her case, due to her honorable death, she had been posthumously celebrated as an imperial court mage. Again, the heroine was utterly shocked. She asked if that meant she had really become a state mage of the empire and been included among the capital's nobility. She had been granted one of the highest titles, giving her the right to take part in ruling the magic tower. She said this was just unbelievable and paused to take it all in, confessing she simply couldn't believe it. Her companion added that it was understandable she hadn't known. It might be worth visiting her grave once they descended, but first, they should assume the name of Count Imtern, who was raising a daughter. Though he had never visited the capital and lived in the countryside, he had enough wealth to register his name among the nobility, making him a suitable choice. Still, there was a chance he was a fraud, created to evade taxes. The heroine asked him to wait. If he had a daughter, that didn't necessarily mean she had to become her. Suddenly the girl looked at her companion and asked what was going on with his face. He had already changed his appearance and asked what she thought of it. She remarked that noble women would probably find him charming. Then she corrected herself, saying they would at least find him likable. The young man said that was perfect. He explained that for his current transformation's purpose, it was crucial for ladies to treat him kindly and be friendly. The heroine asked what exactly his goal was. With a smile, he told her he would be playing the role of a father bringing his daughter to the capital, where she dreamed of a noble life and ballroom dances. The heroine grew angry and demanded he come closer. That very night, she went outside. She approached the world tree and greeted it, saying she had heard it was the one that had brought her back to life. She asked if there was some special reason, perhaps something she was meant to do, or something else the tree desired. She confessed she didn't know what it could be, but promised she would live this life with all her effort. She also wondered if, when her life ended, she could return here, and asked the tree to let her stay with it forever. Immediately after she spoke, her body stopped obeying her and was drawn straight toward the tree. She embraced it, thinking that the world tree would answer through her body. She then felt the response deep within. The tree asked her not to worry, for she would have the chance to fall asleep in its embrace. Smiling, the heroine bid the world tree farewell at dawn, saying they would surely meet again. There she met Zephyr, who asked what she had been doing in the forest all night. She told him she had been saying goodbye to the world tree. Then she showed him an object, explaining that the tree had just given it to her. It had showered her with leaves and particles of light. She asked if he had seen it. The young man told the sorceress that she was truly loved. Then he asked if she even knew what could be done with those leaves. The girl replied that of course she knew. They could protect her from evil people, allow her to contract stronger spirits thanks to enhanced magic, and if even one leaf were put up for auction, she would become fabulously wealthy. Hearing this, the young man wondered why the world tree seemed so fond of this madwoman. Then he grabbed her hand and said they needed to travel quickly, and told her to hold up her hem. On the first day after transformation, they had plenty of work to do. Zephyr snapped his fingers, and they were suddenly transported to a completely different place. The girl was startled and said he had scared her. Asking where they were, he told her they were in an alley, and that she should follow him. Moments later, he welcomed the sorceress to this place. The girl looked ahead and saw something that stunned her. They were standing in the wealthiest city, the second most important in the Denbane Empire. It turned out this was the domain of Archduke Elkinus Pontiac Arin. After taking it in, the heroine remarked that life in the Empire's second city truly bustled. Her companion noted how much it had changed compared to before. When Elkinus had taken control of the city, its name was changed to Arin, and it had grown considerably. Now preparations for a festival were in full swing, making it even livelier. The heroine asked what kind of festival it was and what they celebrated at this time. Zephyr explained it was a special event in this city, a festival honoring the day the dragon was slain. The girl asked what dragon he meant, but suddenly a street vendor told her to try dragon kebabs. They used the freshest kuntern meat. The girl was shocked and asked what he had just said. Her companion quickly explained it was just chicken, and told her not to act like some country bumpkin. Still, Arin took the skewer. She asked if the day they killed kuntern had truly been made into a festival of dragon extermination. Zephyr noted that once a year the entire empire grew rowdy, and pointing ahead, said that no place celebrated with more grandeur than this district. He pointed at a statue in the heart of the city's Heroine Square. It was considered the pride and symbol of the city. He told the sorceress to take a closer look and asked if it reminded her of anyone. The girl peered carefully and said that yes, she thought she did recognize it. The young man replied that most likely she was right. Then she studied the statue intently. The staff and oak rod it held looked strikingly familiar. They resembled the ones she had once used herself. In a flash of realization, she understood it was her. She was stunned and asked why there was a monument of her here. Then she compared the city's name, Heroine, to her own, Arin. Her companion confirmed she was correct. The city had indeed been named after her. It turned out she had become the very figure the entire empire missed dearly. Her travels with her companions were turned into plays and songs. Enchanters and natural scholars regarded Heroine as nearly a sacred place. He also said her oak staff was kept under the Archduke's care and displayed once a year around this very time. Everyone adored her deeply and mourned the inevitable loss. After that, he added that if they were lucky, this would be her return after 80 years. The heroine immediately asked what he meant by if lucky. Was there a chance they might not succeed? Her companion said nothing, and his silence frightened her even more. Some time later, they arrived together at an atelier. There, all the staff and the manager lined up to greet Lady Aller. The manager politely asked how she could help them. In the guise of a father, Zephyr declared that they needed several outfits tailored from the catalog and completed in the shortest possible time. The woman replied that this was no problem and they would select everything within their budget. Then he whispered to the girl that it was also thrilling and even amusing. After all, it was most profitable to remain in the shadow cast by the powerful, so they ought to enjoy it. She thought to herself that Zephyr was simply unbearable. His character had only worsened. After that, one of the attendants approached the heroine and asked her ladyship to follow. The girl immediately agreed and said she was coming. A few moments later, the heroine returned, exclaiming that she simply couldn't take it anymore. The young man sat in a chair sipping tea, and remarked that she had already worn herself out. Moreover, hadn't he been helping her? Did she truly have no willpower at all? The attendants curiously asked how exactly this had been of help. She shouted that because of his awful sense of style, the fitting had taken even longer, since he had chosen the colors and fabric beforehand. Zephyr then told the sorceress he was very sorry, she clearly had no understanding of beauty. Suddenly, the woman who had welcomed them at the beginning declared that the outfit suited the young lady very well. Hearing this, the heroine asked if that was really true. The woman added that both the design and the autumn color palette fit her perfectly. The man sitting nearby immediately declared that in that case, they would take it. After all, it seemed someone was nervous about meeting Elkinus, though at first she had seemed so indifferent. Hearing this, the heroine replied that it wasn't that she was especially worried about the soldiers right now. It was simply that she would be meeting him again for the first time after such a long separation. Then she asked if they would go straight to the Pontiac estate or not. Her companion replied that indeed they would. At that moment, she noticed a flaming envelope floating near the man and wondered if it was a snippet, a common dragon method of sending information. She remembered often seeing Zephyr use them during their journeys. He opened the envelope, and the heroine asked if something had happened. The young man explained it was a snippet carrying a message from an aide he had planted in the palace. At the same time, he snapped his fingers and used some magical technique. The heroine watched and wondered if he had cast a silence spell over the entire room, that only made her more curious about what was written. Clearly, no one else was meant to hear it. Just then, the man announced he had two pieces of news, one bad and one useless. He asked which she preferred to hear first. The girl thought for a moment and said he should start with the useless one. Zephyr praised her choice and explained. At this very moment, a crimson dragon was in the Empire, one who, like him, had transformed his appearance. This was his first transformation in 1500 years of active life, beginning in the Empire about 3 years ago. Reports that were supposed to be regularly sent by dragons undergoing their first transformation had suddenly stopped arriving. That meant they had to find him before he caused trouble, for he was a real thorn in their side. With a sigh, Zephyr muttered that the life of a dragon lord was far too burdensome. Then he added that there was also bad news. He told the sorceress to pluck a leaf from the wreath, chew it thoroughly, and swallow it. The girl, astonished, asked what nonsense he was talking. Zephyr explained that, apparently, returning from the Archduke's estate would not be as simple as expected. At that moment, the heroine obeyed the order her companion had given and chewed the leaf. Seeing this, the young man said it was time for them to depart. They rode in a carriage, heading toward their old friend who had completely lost his mind. Just a moment ago, the carriage had been in a forest, but suddenly it appeared in an entirely different place. Seeing this, the heroine was shocked and exclaimed that they had just been in the forest. What was this? The man explained that it was the protective barrier of the Pontiac Archduchy, the very first defense Elkinus had created after becoming head of the family. It separated the city from the estate. Zephyr continued, explaining that during the festival, all kinds of riffraff could roam around the Archduchy, much like they were doing now. Then he asked the sorceress if she had chewed the leaf thoroughly. She assured him she had. He told her she had done well, but suggested she chew another just in case, since they had already arrived at the place. Then they stepped out of the carriage, and the young man helped his companion down. When she emerged and saw the sight before her, she was utterly stunned. She exclaimed that the entire roof was celadon-colored and looked more valuable than gold. She asked if the estate was even more luxurious than the imperial palace. Her companion confirmed it was true. The Pontiac family was, in fact, far more powerful than the imperial line. The heroine then carefully examined the infrastructure around her, thinking that this was the place where her friend Elkinus had grown up. Suddenly, a man addressed them, remarking that they must be tired from the road, and that he was glad to welcome them. Zephyr looked at the man and asked in surprise if this old fellow was still alive. The heroine asked who he was and whether Zephyr knew him. Her companion explained that the man was a half-elf, already well over 200 years old. He warned her to be careful, for the man's soul was blacker than darkness itself. The man continued walking toward them, confirming that yes, he was indeed a half-elf. Then he added, with mild offense, that his soul was not black at all. Though he was pleased to meet such a noble being, Zephyr asked how he even knew who he was. The man replied that in his long life he had only ever met one living being who called him a serpent with a soul blacker than darkness. Hearing this, Zephyr immediately turned away and exhaled deeply. The man then looked at the heroine and remarked that perhaps the lady standing beside this young man should also be counted among the noble. The girl immediately bowed to him and greeted him. He bowed in return, introduced himself as Carlotte, and added that he was the steward of House Pontiac. Zephyr asked if the warrior was here. The man replied that if he meant the Archduke, then His Highness was indeed present, though due to an ongoing meeting it would not be possible to see him today. Still, since such noble beings had come, they could remain as guests, but Zephyr cut him off, insisting that he not worry and lead them to him. For Zephyr already knew what was happening, and he took full responsibility for whatever came next. Carlotte hesitated for a moment, then said he would trust their words, and agreed to lead them. He assured them that he would guide them to the Archduke at once, and soon they were walking through the corridors of the estate. Zephyr then turned to the sorceress. She asked what he wanted. He said there was still something he had not yet told her. The heroine asked what it was. Zephyr explained that, as she knew, the warrior had enough wealth and power to rival the imperial family. It would have been preferable to eliminate someone who threatened the authority of the imperial bloodline. But the problem was that their opponent was an immortal hero. Since killing him was impossible, the imperial family had changed tactics. They offered him a political marriage. But strangely, his answer had been an outright refusal, and immediately afterward, he had taken possession of Kunturna's egg. Whether it was the family head or imperial knights, anyone who stood against him met death. Zephyr added that, in truth, the imperial family had made a foolish mistake that started it all. The heroine, he said, was about to see what that mistake was. At that moment Carlotte announced that they had finally arrived. The heroine was deeply intrigued by her companion's words, wondering what kind of foolishness could have set everything in motion. A moment later, they entered the Archduke's chambers. At last, before the girl's eyes, stood Elkinus. She thought about how long it had been since they had last met. He looked a little thinner, but otherwise unchanged. Then she noticed other people seated there. She wondered who they were. Could these be the guests who had arrived before them? Her old friend was thanking a young woman for returning alive. Strangely, he called her by name Arin. The heroine was shocked. Why had he called that girl by her name? Looking closely, she realized the girl bore an uncanny resemblance to her former self. A wave of horror swept over her, and she wondered if this was the very scheme the Denbane imperial family occasionally carried out. The Duke then asked the girl if she would tell him about the time they had decided to get rid of Kunturna. She agreed readily. He asked what she had been doing at that time. She replied that on the hill, she had been gathering wormwood. He then asked what he had said when he saw her. The girl answered that he had called her by name. Hearing this bizarre exchange, the heroine was shaken even more. How could this girl know such things? The man pressed further, asking what happened after that. The false Arin said he had spoken to her about the hardships of the Pontiac estate, and that she had been moved to tears. The heroine immediately thought to herself that none of that had ever happened. It was all a lie. Elkinus thanked the girl for sharing her version, adding that the memories of those days had come alive in his mind. But after a moment, he smiled and remarked that her answers differed too greatly from the memories etched in his heart. Then the Duke drew his sword and killed the man sitting beside the girl. She, still smiling, said it couldn't be helped. After all, it had been so long ago, and perhaps she had simply forgotten a little. But the guy with a weapon in his hands added that their exam had failed. After all, the damned imperial family had completely lost their conscience, just like a couple of years ago. When Jamil's memoirs were discovered, everyone now says it resembles this. Then he stood right before the girl and asked where she managed to find such fools. The very same girl immediately fell to her knees and pleaded with His Highness to forgive her, begging for mercy. She insisted she never wanted to deceive him and begged him to believe that she was telling the pure truth. Moments later, she kept pleading with the man for mercy. But he only smiled at her and declared that, of course, he would not. A moment later, he pressed his sword against the girl's neck and said she didn't resemble Arin in the slightest, absolutely not at all. Then he added that this was just another failure of the imperial family. He ordered her to disappear from his sight at once. She obeyed immediately, thanking him greatly for sparing her life. The heroine, together with her companion, stood in the room, clearly seeing and hearing everything. She wondered what had just happened. It was the foolish act the Denbane imperial family committed toward Elkinus. They kept sending him girls disguised as his former lover. So, time and time again, he encountered fakes, again and again. He rejected her false image standing right before him. Suddenly the man turned to his subordinate, asking where his clothes were so he could change. The subordinate immediately handed them over, saying they were right there. The heroine thought she finally understood what Zephyr meant when he said Elkinus had gone completely insane. If the same trick had been repeating for decades, it was impossible to stay sane. Then the girl glanced at her friend as he was changing. Seeing him like that, she realized he was quite handsome and felt embarrassed. A few moments later, she pulled herself together, remembering she came for business, not to admire a bare body. At that point, the Archduke turned to Carlotte and asked who the people were standing behind him. After all, hadn't he said earlier that he didn't want to receive anyone today? The man immediately apologized to his lord but explained that the arriving guests insisted on seeing him. The young man noted that if Carlotte disobeyed him for these visitors, then it must have been someone from his own squad. He began wondering to whom this unfamiliar face could belong. After all, Hania and Jamil were long dead, and he had just driven away his beloved companion not long ago. Besides, Getter had promised never to cross his path again. From all the possible options, only one remained. At that moment, he realized who it might be, and madness filled his eyes. A heartbeat later, he rushed toward the man disguised as Zephyr. He grabbed him and demanded to know what hole he had crawled out of. Like a pathetic lizard, he asked if the man knew how long he had been searching for him. He added that the man had better give him clear answers to all his questions if he didn't want to die right here and now. After all, Hania had revealed something intriguing to him during her final confession. The heroine stood nearby, shocked by everything happening. Meanwhile, the man demanded to know from his captive what he had done with Arin's spiritual sphere. Hearing this, the girl recalled that he once claimed he had secretly taken the spiritual sphere from everyone, yet apparently, even Divine Breath had noticed it. Still, this was hardly surprising. After all, a high-ranking priest simply could not fail to notice a soul. The Duke threatened that if the man didn't tell him the whole truth, he would kill him. Zephyr, in response, told him to go ahead and try if he dared. His opponent asked whether he really thought he couldn't stop him. The heroine watched, sensing the deadly aura from afar. This Elkinus was nothing like the one she once knew. She had hoped he lived peacefully in a world free of demonic dragons and their ilk, but she was wrong. Elkinus pressed on, demanding to know what had been done with Arin's spiritual sphere. Her body had been cleansed by immersion into the sacred spring, yet the sorceress could not be revived, and all because this man had stolen that cursed spiritual sphere. With a smile, Zephyr asked whether he had truly searched thoroughly, since it might be right beside him at this very moment. At that instant, the heroine spoke up, and the man immediately turned his gaze on her. She asked if he recognized her. She was the one who had shared joys and sorrows with him, the one who had been his companion through everything. But the warrior immediately retorted to the captive in his grasp. He said the man was even more shameless than Denbane's lackeys, for at least they had bothered to copy her appearance, since even that was beyond him. He had at least brought a bold child capable of hiding lies. The heroine realized he didn't recognize her. She thought it was natural for him to be wary of her. She couldn't reason it out. But when Elkinus failed to recognize her and only stared with cold eyes, her heart tightened with pain. Overcome with grief and wounded by his coldness, The girl burst into bitter tears. The whole situation crushed her, and she hated it all. The man noticed and asked why she was crying so hard. He was curious about what could upset her so much. Then he stepped closer. He admitted that, as the snake had said, perhaps she really could be Arin. Judging by traces of white magic, she was indeed a spellcaster like that girl, and the differences in appearance could be explained if she had received a new body from the world tree. He remarked that she must have perfected every little detail if Zephyr had brought her here. Then he wondered aloud how best to test her and confirm the truth. The heroine thought Elkinus only saw her as a new test subject. She realized she truly was Arin, the one he had been searching for, yet she doubted she could ever match the girl he had idealized in his mind. She feared that once the examination ended, he would kill her, just as he had done to countless other girls before. Thinking of all this, the girl declared that she was not Arin. Hearing this, the man demanded to know what nonsense she was saying. She continued, saying she didn't even know who that was, and repeated she was no Arin. She wondered if her words had sounded disrespectful, or if it was just her imagination. He asked if she truly claimed not to be Arin. She affirmed it, saying she had no idea who Arin was and was truly not her. At the same time, she insisted on her denial and begged him to believe her. The Duke then asked who she really was. The heroine hesitated, then pointed at Zephyr and claimed she was his daughter. Her opponent asked what daughter of Zephyr she was talking about. Was she seriously implying he had found a mate and fathered children? Now he was very curious about who the mother was, recalling her friend's words that with humanity's will Zephyr was her father and the world tree her mother. She answered that her mother was in the forest, but at present, she was little more than a vegetable. Hearing this, Zephyr was completely shocked. He wondered how the sorceress could say such a thing about the noble and mighty world tree. The warrior demanded what it all meant. The girl added that it was a bit difficult to explain in detail, since it concerned only family members. Her opponent remarked that, according to her, her mother was a vegetable. Then he dismissed it, saying that even such a pathetic lizard might have reasons not to speak of it. He then asked why, during her first transformation, she came straight here. The heroine thought of telling Elkinus she had come because she heard he was in danger and wanted to protect him, but those words remained only in her mind. Instead, she said that her father had told her to come and look at the newly hatched child here. The man asked what child she was talking about. He was quite curious about the matter, since he had been excluded from the Dragon Book and had no ties to them at all. The heroine wanted to reply but hesitated, and Zephyr stepped into the conversation. He explained that the child was born of Kunturna. They had to monitor the possibility of him turning into something unusual. They also needed to know whether he was truly a dragon, if, upon hatching, his first words were "You are not my mother" and "Who is this pitiful human?" then he would reject him. In such a case, he would immediately escape, and the sylphs would report it at once. The heroine thought it was good that her partner had recovered quickly while she was stalling for time. He went on to say that he would not take the Duke's child, but they could still explain the problem. In fact, it would benefit the man himself to show the child to them. The warrior listened carefully, then thought for a while, agreed, and invited them to follow him. They all did as he said, walking down the corridors of the vast mansion. The heroine followed, realizing the destination was quite far. It turned out the child was so large that he was not kept in the main building, but in an annex. Suddenly the man said they had finally arrived. He invited them to come in at once, saying the child was lying in a cradle, and they could see him there. The heroine entered the room and looked around. She thought it looked quieter and cozier than she had imagined, yet even with the light off, she felt disgust and unease. It seemed the feeling came from being close to the source, and the other two sensed it as well. The sinister energy came from Kunturna's offspring, the reason Elkinus had been branded insane, and the reason he stood against the world. The girl thought she might destroy the culprit with her own hands. But at that very moment, a small child's hand reached out of the cradle. The heroine looked inside and saw a baby lying there, astonished. Everyone in the room was shocked by the sight. The heroine looked at the child and thought he was adorable. The baby's gaze fixed on the Archduke. The girl, standing between them, wondered if it was her imagination or if he was asking to be held. She turned to her former best friend and asked if she could pick the child up. He coldly replied that he didn't care at all. Taking this as permission, the heroine immediately stepped forward and lifted the baby into her arms. She leaned closer, thinking he smelled pleasantly sweet already. Then she wondered, Was this child really the source of the dark energy everyone spoke of? She realized it wasn't so, since all she felt from him was pure light, but where the strange energy came from was still unclear. Zephyr turned to the warrior, asking if it was true the child had hatched from an egg 10 years ago. The man confirmed it, though he had never made it public, there could be no doubt. The heroine's ally declared that it was simply impossible, since the child was definitely not a dragon. The Duke demanded to know what he meant. How could the boy not be a dragon? The ally explained that a dragon hatchling never takes human form. At birth, a dragon resembles a small winged lizard. Within 5 months, it grows quickly, leaves to find a new place, and lives independently. The heroine immediately asked who the child was if he wasn't a dragon. The young man told her he was a half-blood. The girl noted she had heard of such beings, children born from humans carrying dragon seed, but how could a child that hatched from an egg be one of them? Zephyr explained that usually it was a human woman who fell in love with a dragon, but sometimes, rarely, when a dragon fell for a man, it laid an egg infused with human energy. There was also another possibility. A hollow egg could be forcibly fertilized, covered with one's own energy. The heroine immediately wondered what exactly fertilized with one's own energy meant. She was curious about how such a thing could be done. Then the heroine's companion addressed the Archduke, asking if he had spilled blood onto the egg. The man gave no answer, remaining silent as he listened. From his silence, the companion understood that this was indeed what had happened. The egg laid by Kunturna had originally been a barren shell. For 70 years, no reaction had come, and the warrior realized the truth. He had poured his own magic and energy into it, sealing it with his blood. He spoke of the incomprehensible magical power he had obtained from Kunturna's heart. Pointing at the child, he declared that this was how the baby had come into being. He asked how far the man intended to go. Was it truly necessary to create a child in such a way? The heroine thought these words were not fit for a child's ears. She prayed to the spirits, asking them to silence the conversation. Zephyr kept demanding what madness had possessed the man, since if one sprinkled human blood on a dragon egg, the hatchling would never be a normal dragon. The spirits heeded the heroine and obeyed her request. She realized this was thanks to the wreath of the world tree. Even without a contract, the spirits acted in accord with her will. She also thought that although the child was too young to understand, it was better he never knew the truth, that he was not a long-awaited child, but born only because someone found it convenient. After a while, the Archduke asked the only question that mattered to him. What were the chances that this child would inherit Kunturna's powers once grown? The heroine laid the baby back into his cradle, where he had been all along. Zephyr pressed further, demanding how many more mistakes the warrior intended to make. Suddenly, a girl rushed in and told them to stop the pointless discussion. She added that both men needed to calm down, for even a baby could sense the tense atmosphere. Then the heroine turned to her so-called father. She pointed out that even for a half-blood, it wasn't normal to remain an infant for 10 years. They would need to observe him longer, since his birth and conception were extraordinary. She reflected that there were many things in the world even dragons didn't know, just as her father and mother had created her. The heroine thought that he had given his blood to the world tree, making him somewhat like this boy. In turn, the young man wondered what nonsense the sorceress was speaking. Wasn't the boy carrying the egg of a demonic dragon? Then the girl stated that in any case, the child should be observed not by the two of them, but by an uninterested party, preferably a representative of the dragon race, and she could call it that. Suddenly the baby climbed out of his cradle again, and the heroine wondered if he really wanted to be held once more. The warrior simply stood and watched from the side. At the same time, the heroine went over and took the child into her arms. He was quite delighted to be with this very girl. The Archduke remarked that it turned out to be a good idea, and it made sense, a watcher for the half-blood who could objectively evaluate the situation. It turned out that Zephyr's daughter would become exactly such a person. Then the young man said he was lucky that a candidate perfectly fitting the role had been found. The heroine asked if he was really talking about her. The young man noted that it seemed they had not fully settled the matter of the observer. The girl immediately looked at her ally. He, in turn, exhaled deeply and declared that he too would stay, since after all, this was his daughter. But the Archduke retorted, asking what he was talking about. After all, only his daughter would remain here and nothing more. Perhaps he had simply misunderstood him earlier. Still, it greatly annoyed him that her blood flowed in the girl's veins, but out of necessity, he would allow her to live here as an exception. Then he addressed the girl, adding that he would permit her to remain at the Pontiac estate as nanny and teacher. If she disagreed, then the conversation would be over. Whatever changes might occur in the child, their race would never again witness them. The heroine immediately realized this was the final warning. If she left now, he truly would never share anything with them. Then she looked at her former friend and thought that she wanted to give him both happiness and freedom. And for some reason, she also very much wanted this unwanted child to find happiness too. Hearing no answer, the Archduke turned away and said that if she did not wish it, then she should leave at once, but the girl quickly interrupted him, declaring that she agreed, she would stay here and look after this child. A short while later, the heroine was already looking around her room. She wondered if she was really going to live here, since the chamber was far too spacious for one person. She asked if Carlotte had perhaps made a mistake, but he replied that everything was correct. It was the second largest chamber in the entire mansion, for it was the unchanging rule of House Pontiac to care wholeheartedly for their honored guests. Suddenly the Archduke approached her and said that everything had worked out well. They had found a nanny for the child. Then he added that he still hadn't heard her name, and wondered how he should address her. The girl hesitated to answer. She thought she could not simply call herself Arin. She needed something else. After a moment, she remembered a name she had always liked long ago. With a smile on her face, she declared that her name was Adele. She thought that finally the day had come when she could use it. Her companion repeated, so, her name was Adele. Then he introduced himself as Archduke Elkinus Pontiac. The child she would care for was named Rinthi Arin Pontiac, but she could call him Rinthi. The heroine immediately thought, so the middle name came from the name of a city. The young man added that this was all for now and wished Adele a good rest. She, in turn, thought that at last she could relax a little. At that moment, Carlotte asked her pardon and addressed Lady Adele. He asked if he might pose her a question. The girl asked what exactly he wanted and what had happened. The man then said that in truth, she and Lord Zephyr were not really father and daughter. Was he correct in understanding this? At such a question, the heroine was shocked and frozen place. She thought, how could this man know, when not even a day had passed since her arrival here? She told herself she needed calmness, only calmness. She could simply pretend not to understand what he meant, and that would be the end of it. But instead, the heroine began to mumble something, trying to mislead the man, yet he replied that the lady truly did not know how to lie. He added that ever since their arrival at the mansion and their meeting with his lordship, they had never once called each other father and daughter. That was how he guessed. Hearing this, the heroine thought that they truly had not been cautious enough. She too would have suspected something at that moment. Carlotte continued, saying that Lord Zephyr had used only one form of address. He called her sorceress, and the person he had always referred to that way was Lady Arin. Now he said that this was truly unbelievable. The heroine was shocked by this turn of events. She thought he had even figured out who she really was. This would not do at all. She needed a good excuse. The girl remarked that she, like Arin, could summon spirits. So it happened that Zephyr sometimes called her sorceress as well, and since she and Zephyr were closely connected, they really were almost like father and daughter. The man nodded, saying he understood, but from his expression, the heroine realized he hadn't truly believed it. She thought that if she continued talking, she would only seem more suspicious, so she turned to the man and said she had a small request. She asked him not to tell Lord Elkinus about this under any circumstances. He immediately assured her that of course he wouldn't. After all, he wasn't speaking now as the Pontiac family's butler, but as an old man who had lived a long life and had grown curious. He told her she could be at ease. He had no intention of spreading this information anywhere. For as was long known, he was in fact a half-elf. Because of the elven blood flowing in his veins, he loved nature. He explained that when the girl had arrived at the mansion today, he had felt an incredibly strong natural energy. It was so warm and calming that it had taken his breath away. The heroine asked if that was really true. She thought that perhaps what she had gained from the world tree allowed her very presence to attract an elf's attention. Then the butler remarked that it seemed she could probably produce the same effect on his master. The girl apologized and asked what he had just said, but he answered that he had only been talking to himself. What could one expect from an old man? Such things happened often. After that he prepared to leave the room, saying that he would now let her be. He hoped this place would become her home for the time being, without causing her any discomfort. He kindly asked her to take care of his lordship and the young master. Hearing this, the girl thought that Carlot truly put his heart into serving Elkinus. She also thought he did not seem like the bad person Zephyr had claimed. On the contrary, the polite old gentleman was quite pleasant to her. But suddenly, Zephyr appeared behind her and addressed the sorceress. The heroine was startled and told the young man that he had frightened her. She asked how long he had been there, and told him to start using the door instead of always sneaking in like that. He replied that the master of the mansion had driven him away, though in any case he would have done the same. Then the girl added that he had shown up at just the right time. After all, if people found out he had stolen her spirit sphere, he would become famous across the entire continent. The young man said that if not for him, the girl would have died, and how could she speak to him like this now? Then he added that it was true what they said, raising children was a thankless task. The heroine asked if he would always speak to her as though she were a child. Then he remarked that she had even called the world tree a vegetable. Then he asked how she could even bring herself to call the world tree a vegetable. The girl replied that it had simply slipped out of her mouth. Was that really such a problem? After that, they just kept quarreling for a while. But eventually, both of them grew quite tired. Zephyr said that it was good they had survived after all. The heroine added that he was right, since she had truly thought it was the end. Then she thought that the present Elkinus was not at all the man she had once known. He killed people without a second thought and attacked his comrade, with whom he had once risked his life on the battlefield, without hesitation. Then the heroine turned to Zephyr and asked if she had simply been too naive. Back then, she had thought that by sacrificing herself, everyone could live a peaceful and happy life, but she had been wrong. Her actions had not saved Elkinus, but on the contrary, had driven him insane. Now she blamed herself, telling herself that it was all probably her fault. Her companion immediately rose and began to think of what he could say to his partner. Then he placed his hand on the sorceress's head and told her that they had survived thanks to her. It was because of her sacrifice back then that fate had spared them all. After all, not everyone would have been capable of that. Then he said she must never think that her convictions and honor, which she had tried to uphold, were meaningless. In truth, she really had saved Elkinus, and now she had been given another chance to save him again. With tears of joy in her eyes, the heroine thanked her companion. She admitted that it was thanks to him that she felt a little better. A moment later, she jumped to her feet. Then she declared that instead of dwelling on the past, it was better to think about the future, and asked if she was right. Her companion remarked that she had indeed recovered quickly. Then he asked what exactly she planned to do in the future. The girl told him that first of all, of course, she would look after Rinthi as he grew up. But there was also something else that required their attention. In the nursery, there was a terrifying, sinister energy. The young man told her that if she felt it, then he had sensed it as well. A strange power had been lingering there. Now they needed to find out where it had come from. At first, the heroine thought that the source of the strange energy filling the room was its master. After all, it belonged to the child of a demon dragon. But when she took the child in her arms, she had not felt any negative effects or sinister aura. Elkinus certainly knew about the power circulating through the room. Now she wondered why he had ignored it. Zephyr added that she would discover more about this energy while she watched the half-blood grow and develop. The girl agreed, saying that was true, but she would also put an end to it. Her companion immediately asked what she meant by put an end. The heroine told Zephyr that, as he had said, her death had saved many lives, but the fact remained that she had also driven Elkinus into madness. She could not pretend she did not know that even after 80 years, her friend was still trapped in the past. She hoped that now he would be able to accept her death and make peace with it, that he would live happily, laugh and cry, all while being with the one he loved. Her companion said that for that to happen, Elkinus would have to let go of the feelings he had for her. The heroine added that she already knew what he felt for her, and that meant they had to deal with that first. Zephyr was shocked by her words and thought, could it be that this clueless sorceress had figured out what this man felt for her? Had she really guessed his true feelings? But the girl quickly declared that Elkinus had simply grown attached to her. Her companion sighed deeply and said that, as always, she never failed to disappoint him. The heroine asked in surprise what exactly she had said wrong. The young man continued, saying that though he believed she should hear this from the warrior himself, his feelings were not mere attachment. It was more like a bomb that appeared out of nowhere, with its fuse already torn off, yet never burning out. Then he told the sorceress to think carefully about what usually comes before attachment. After a moment of thought, the girl asked if he really believed that Elkinus liked her. He replied that he couldn't understand how she could possibly deny it. The heroine said it was simply impossible. From the very beginning, he had always looked as though he disliked being near her. Whenever they were together, he was constantly glancing around, as if hoping to escape. At one point, she had even thought that she smelled bad. Zephyr sat there, unable to figure out how to prove it to her. He admitted he truly didn't understand what exactly had drawn Elkinus to her. After all, she had even been given the chambers reserved for the Archduchess. The heroine pointed out that it had been Carlotte who had chosen the room, not Elkinus. Her companion immediately repeated, what had she just said? He thought to himself that this sly snake turned out to be frighteningly perceptive. Then the girl shouted back, what kind of look was that? Was she not allowed to live here? Was this some trap set by Carlotte to frame her? Had he realized that his master had gone mad because of her, and prepared all this, or what? Then, in panic, she turned to Zephyr and asked what she should do. Was she really in danger? The young man asked her if that snake had already discovered her true identity. The heroine added that Carlotte had asked her to take care of his master and the young lord. Had he only been pretending? She demanded that Zephyr at least say something to her. The young man told the sorceress that it was not what she thought. She could calm down at once. He also thought to himself that Carlotte had already started matchmaking, which annoyed him greatly. But he also knew that Carlotte had overestimated the sorceress's perceptiveness. So the desired outcome would not be achieved so easily. To deceive that snake, all the heroine had to do was behave exactly as she was behaving now. After all these conversations, her companion finally left her. Night had come, and the heroine lay in her bed. Then she woke and rose from the bed. She realized she had fallen asleep, and soon it would already be dawn. Then she went and sat by the window. She wondered if Zephyr had returned safely. She still worried whether he had found a place to stay. The saddest part for her was that she had fallen asleep right in the middle of their conversation. Zephyr had spoken of Hania, who had taken the post of head of the church, also of Jamil, who had ensured order in the criminal underworld of the Denbane Empire. What interested him most was that both had kept detailed records about the unit that had fought against Kunturna. The Archduke had said that before her death, Hania had confessed something interesting to him, and when Jamil's memoirs were discovered, people said almost the same things. The heroine's companion told her that the confession and the memoirs she had heard about earlier in the day were those very records. Hania's confession was a series of recorded voice messages. What Elkinus had heard was apparently not revealed to the public and was meant for him alone. Jamil's memoirs, on the other hand, described in detail the campaign against Kunturna. Interestingly, they were divided into parts and sold on the black market for large sums. After leaving this world, she provided her groups and family with such wealth that they could live comfortably for the rest of their lives, and most likely, it is precisely these diaries that the imperial family's fake Arin's use. Hearing this, the heroine remarked that Jamil was truly incredible. She managed to sell her memoirs herself and still left behind an inheritance. Her companion commented that she was simply a spoiled child. Then the girl thought that Hania, too, was remarkable. After all, that little girl had become the head of the church. She remembered how they once walked and talked together. Back then, the girl had told the heroine that she knew so much about nature. In response, the heroine asked if that wasn't the same as memorizing all the prayers. But Hania had replied that it was different, since she had simply been drilling them into her memory from childhood at the monastery. The heroine, smiling, told her that she too had studied under her mother when she was little, so it seemed that rote learning was also very important. But her companion insisted that it wasn't about that at all. The sorceress was truly interesting and charming. The heroine had blushed deeply and replied that she thought it was actually her companion who was the real cutie and charmer. The girl thanked her again for the kind words. Then Arin said that in the future she would buy a house and plant medicinal herbs in the backyard. She asked if the heroine would drink tea with her then. Hania wondered if she was even allowed, since she had thought the heroine only drank tea with the warrior. She added that it was pure happiness for her to be given such a chance.